Nothing compares to dark, rich, nutritious compost for your flower beds, your gardens, and more. It's really not that hard, I promise. Just a few simple steps and you will have compost from now on. Hi everybody, welcome back to Sawdust and Cornbread. I'm Laura Lee. If this is your first time as a guest on the channel, be sure to like and subscribe. I try to put out new content every week. There is no better time than right now to begin your very own compost pile. I started mine with $0 invested. I'm going to show you how I did that, and I'll be getting returns upon returns for our flower beds, our gardens, our vegetables, and more. So come on, I'll show you how to do it. Your first task is to find a good spot for your compost pile. I happen to have an abandoned corner, and that is ideal. You don't want it too close to your house because sometimes as everything is composting and breaking down, it doesn't smell the best. Also, you'll have fruits and vegetables and peelings that you put on there, so you don't want to attract rodents close to your house. So this is a good corner, and fall is a great time to start it because there's plenty of leaves on the ground to begin with. Now, what I did, since I'm doing a corner, is I'm using pipes to anchor down some of that plastic outdoor landscape. It's kind of like a netting. I had that available. You could use whatever you have available, screen, tarps, whatever you'd like. And a neat idea is to use one of those hook-in screws, or rather screw-in hooks, to attach that to the fence. That way, when I want to access this corner, I can simply pull it off and then pull it back on. So here it is all set up. I originally was going to use these old pallets to kind of protect the fence. Later on, I opted for some leftover landscaping fabric that I have. But I put a good bed of dry leaves down. They were a little bit damp. And then cleaned out the eggs from the duck house. If you have chickens, ducks, rabbits, of course, their waste material, the shavings, and all of their droppings are going to be perfect for that compost pile. You've already got built-in magic for your compost pile. The key is to do kind of shallow layers. It's good to always spray it down lightly or mist it between layers. That just helps everything to break down. So now I have a layer of soil on the bottom. I have my leaves on top of that, and now I have all of the shavings and the waste from the duck house. I'm just going to take my rake and smooth that out as evenly as I can. One thing to keep in mind is you are going to have to work in that little area wherever you choose. So make sure that your landscaping fabric or your netting or your screen or whatever you're using as a bin to contain your compost, you want to make sure that it's low enough to work around the edges. Oh, I missed an egg. Glad I saw that. So mainly with composting, it's all about layers, shallow layers of organic material such as soil, leaves, and then your shavings and waste from chickens, ducks, or rabbits. There are some things that you can add in there to make it even more nutritious and wonderful, and some things you don't want to use. But why are we putting all this care into it? Let's remind ourselves. The reason we want good compost is so come spring, we start now in the fall, come spring when our flowers start to come up, when we have these beautiful gardens all over the yard, we don't have to go to the big box store and purchase great big boxes of chemical laden topsoil or compost. We have it all in our own yard. It's convenient. We don't have to lug those bags, and we know exactly what is going into those beautiful flowers and plants. Once we started using compost, well, we used the shavings from the duck house on some of the vegetables and fruits that we grow in our own yard, we started seeing a huge difference in the quality and the quantity. Our blackberries are bigger, plumper, juicier. your tomatoes, put the compost in the soil on those, and who doesn't love a juicy red tomato? So think about that when you're here at fall putting your compost pile together. And thinking about the things to put in there, think about natural compost. What happens in the forest, in the woods? You're thinking peat moss. As all of those plants degrade, die down, and break into smaller pieces of wood bark, leaves, pine needles, all of that turns into that gorgeous soil. Think about things in your own yard that you can use to mimic what nature does. I know our pond is beginning to fill with leaves, and I'm sure that your yards and ponds, if you have them, are as well. What a wonderful thing to take those leaves before they completely blow away and add them to your compost. Rather than tossing fruit skins and eggshells in the trash, add those to your compost pile for even extra nutrients. You don't want to put proteins in there or fatty items like meat or the egg yolk or white or things like that, because that will go rancid and spoil your compost. And remember, even though you may be squeamish, insects, worms, caterpillars, pill bugs, things like that are your friends whenever it comes to gardening. I have even known people to buy fishing worms, night crawlers, and sprinkle those over the compost pile. They're going to chew that up, work through it, and help it to break down even faster. While you can't completely prevent it, there are some things you don't want in your compost pile, especially you don't want to do it on purpose. By starting in the fall, it's going to help you to avoid weed growth, but you can just pluck those out just like you would in any other part of the yard. But keep in mind, you also don't want to add weed seeds. So if you're thinking about pulling up weeds and just throwing them on your compost pile, especially dandelions, you would be inadvertently planting weeds in some very fertile soil. So be sure not to do that. Another thing just to keep in mind, if you have cats or dogs, you don't want to use their waste. It's just not very sanitary, and it does carry toxoplasmosis, especially if you're pregnant or have young children. That can be dangerous. So all autumn and winter, keep adding layers and sprinkling your compost pile. Now, if you happen to have heavy snow or you forget to turn the soil, you want to use your rake to stir that up ever so often. If you forget, come springtime, your compost pile may look like this. It's just as good, it's just a little bit compacted, so you'll have to take a shovel and stir that soil a little bit to use it in your garden. There's no better time than in early fall right now to begin your own compost pile. There's plenty of organic material. The weeds aren't as much of a struggle. The days are cooler. So go ahead and get out there and get a little bit dirty. Come spring, you will be glad you did. It's really simple. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, be sure to like the video and subscribe. I'll see you next time. God bless.